This section is unabashedly cribbed from the book Myths and Legends of the First World War by James Hayward. In it, he compiles accounts from all manner of individuals which documented the Russian Expeditionary Force in World War I. This little-known event has been largely forgotten by historians, which was that in 1914, from September to October, roughly 250,000 Russian soldiers were transported from Archangel to ports in Scotland and traveled through the United Kingdom on their way to France during the Great War, World War I. Following the Bolshevik Revolution in Russia in 1917, accounting of the Russian forces on the Western Front, the Russian forces that were fed into the British Expeditionary Force that was sent to France, this was systematically memory holed. However, like a black hole, their presence is clearly accounted for by the convergence of multiple sources of testimony and the behavior of German forces in response to their presence in Belgium. So this is from Reverend Andrew Clark, the rector of the village of Great Lees in Essex. Friday, 28th of August. Report current in Braintree that a Russian force has been brought to Yorkshire and landed here, and that the East Coast trains have been commandeered to transport them rapidly south en route for the French theater of war. Sunday, 30th of August. On my way to church, Miss Lucy Tritton met me, jumped off her bicycle, and told me that her father had heard from someone in the Home Office, she said, that a large Russian force from Archangel had landed in Scotland and was being speeded south by rail to take its place in the theater of war in Belgium. I mentioned the report of Saturday's evening paper that a trainload of 200 Russians escaped from Germany into Switzerland and France and had reached England, but Miss Tritton was positive that her information was authentic and correct. Wednesday, 2nd of September. Dr. Young of Braintree told Miss Mildred Clark that on Sunday the Russian troops were fed in Colchester. Thursday, 3rd of September. Letter from Oxford from my aunt. It was said last Friday that 80,000 Russians passed through here. No one was allowed to see them, but for several days, only one passenger train was running, and the railway would not send luggage in advance. Monday, 7th of September. Montague Edwards Hughes, J.P. of Lees Priory, told me that an old servant of his had written that from her bedroom window she had watched train after train for hours, passing by night to Bristol. There were no lights in the carriages, but by the light of the cigars and cigarettes they were smoking, the black beards of the Russians could be seen. Saturday, 3rd of October. Popular belief in the passage of the Russians, Archangel, Scotland ports, English railways, Cardiff and Bristol continues. The latest explanation of the absence of news of them is that their guns went down in the wreck of the Oceanic off the Scotch coast. They cannot get to work till fresh artillery is got for them from Archangel. Vera Britton, whose diary formed the basis of her celebrated memoir Testament of Youth, entries in early September record, "Only that day I had heard from my dentist that 100,000 Russians had landed in England. A whole train full of them, I reported, is said to have passed through Stoke, so that is why the Staffordshire people are so wise. But when I returned to Buxton, I learned that a similar contingent had been seen in Manchester. And for a few days, the astonishing ubiquitousness of the invisible Russians formed a topic of absorbing interest at every tea table throughout the country. By the time, however, that we started believing in Russians, England had already become accustomed to the war." Lord Wester Wemyss, then the Rear Admiral commanding the Channel-based 12th Cruiser Squadron, recorded the following in his diary. "In letters from various friends, I had heard many rumors of the presence of vast hordes of Russian troops in England on their way to the battlefields of France, but I could not bring myself to believe in the story. If indeed they were being embarked at Archangel, why not disembark them at Brest? But I received on September 3rd a letter from a very old friend, Commodore General Digby, who had retired many years ago but was now working at the Admiralty, telling me as a fact that 80,000 Russian troops were embarking at Southampton. Truly a marvel. As a result, papers became more open in reporting the story. For example, the Daily News for September 9th published the following. The official sanction to the publications of the above, the telegram from Rome, removes the newspaper reserve with regards to the rumors which for the last fortnight have coursed with such astonishing persistency through the length and breadth of England. Whatever the unvarnished truth about the Russian forces in the West, so extraordinary has been the ubiquity of the rumors in question that they are almost more amazing if they are false than if they they are true. Either a baseless rumor has obtained a currency and a credence perhaps unprecedented in history, or, incredible as it may appear, it is a fact that Russian troops, whatever the number may be, have been disembarked and passed through this country, while not one man in 10,000 was able to say with certainty whether their very existence was not a myth. P.J. Phillip, its special correspondent in France. According to the news, his report served to prove the correctness of the general impression that Russian troops have been moved through England, although precisely who or what Philip saw with his own eyes remains unclear. Tonight, in an evening paper, I find the statement, de bonne source, that the German army in Belgium has been cut by the Belgian army reinforced by Russian troops. Landing of Russian troops in Belgium. The last phrase unseals my pen. For 2 days, I have been on a long trek looking for the Russians, and now I have found them. Where and how it would not be discreet to tell, but the published statement that they are here is sufficient, and of my own knowledge I can answer for their presence. The next day the Evening News met this bulletin with a compendium of typical reports. All roads lead to Rome, and the railroad from Archangel led everywhere. The Cossacks were seen, though the blinds were always down, at Peckham, at Chichester, at York, at Bristol, at Ealing, at Darlington, at Ludgate Hill Bridge, at Evesham, at Peterborough. A grey cloud of fierce, whiskered men went rolling down to Cheltenham. At Euston, their passing closed the station for 36 hours. At Rigby, they drank great draughts of coffee. In the East End, children playing by the railway embankment were gladdened with showers of Russian money thrown to them from a passing train. Cossacks swarmed at Southampton, and a London milkman, clattering his cans to salute the dawn, saw the myriads of the North march past him in the silent, awful streets. Of course, there was always this suspicious circumstance. You never met a man who had seen the Russians. You met a man who knew a man who had seen the Russians, and this should have aroused suspicions. Macdonough noted in his journal on September 15th, 1914, London is depressed today. The flower of our fondest hope has been suddenly blighted. The Press Bureau has issued an absolute denial of the rumor so widely credited a few days ago that an immense force of Russians had reached the Western Front through this country, like everybody else. I kept the ball rolling, and the only excuse that can be offered is that it was a case of the wish being the father to the thought. Indeed, looking back on the rumor now, the wonder is how it ever came to be believed in. Why it not only invented suspicion, but shouted for it. The story of railway porters in Edinburgh having had to sweep the snow out of the carriages of the trains conveying the Russians ought to have been sufficient to damn the rumor. Personally, I disagree. I think that could just be one particularly dumb story that there would be snow still in the carriages. Still, there are people so happily constituted that their faith in this story is strengthened rather than shaken by the official denial. Believe you me, they say with a delightful air of confidence, the contradiction is meant to deceive the Germans. The Russian army is on the Western Front all right. At the end of August, on the suggestion of Winston Churchill, 3,000 British troops from the Royal Marine Brigade were landed at Ostend to bolster the crumbling Belgian line. One of the officers attached to the brigade was a colonel named George Aston, who later recalled, "The outstanding occurrences which were most helpful were the Russian troops rumor about mysterious Russians arriving in Scotland ports and traveling southward by night, and the news that the Belgian division, driven out of Namur, was embarking at Havre and coming round to Ostend. The Russian troops rumor, told to me by the correspondent of the Times, was very useful. My Marines were dressed in blue, with round caps and no peaks. They might easily be taken for Russians by German spies. Crowds of civilians were traveling through Ostend for the south, and spying was very easy. I hoisted my huge Union Jack in the railway station for them to report, and I took care that the Russian troops rumor was told as a strict secret to as many people as possible. That is the best way to make sure of wide publicity. But although I heard afterwards that the rumor was believed by vast numbers of people in England, I thought at the time that it was almost too much to hope for its belief by experts in the German General Staff. I thought at the time it was almost too much to hope for its belief by experts in the German General Staff. Because those experts in the German General Staff, they must be doing their due diligence. Assumption of due diligence here. Writing in 1930, Little Hart records that reports of a Russian force on the Belgian coast may have caused the Germans to withdraw precious reserves from the Battle of the Marne in the south. On September 5th, the day when the French troops were moving forward to strike at Kluck, Colonel Hensch, the representative of the Supreme Command, came to the threatened army with this ominous and despairing warning. The news is bad. The 7th and 6th armies are blocked. The 4th and 5th are meeting with strong resistance. The English are embarking fresh troops continuously on the Belgian coast. There are reports of a Russian expeditionary force in the same parts. A withdrawal is becoming inevitable. We know that from other sources that 30,000 Marines had grown in the German command's imagination, and 40,000 of that the Russians were said to be 80,000. Thus, the German flank army was left to face its ordeal with the belief that the rear was seriously menaced. In addition, the official British war history, edited by Brigadier General J.E. Edmonds and published in 14 volumes between 1922 and 1949, attributes the following to an insider at the German High Command. At this time, August 30th, there was no lack of alarming reports at General Headquarters. Ostend and Antwerp took a prominent role in them. One day, countless British troops were said to have landed at Ostend and be marching on Antwerp. On another, that there were to be great sorties from Antwerp. Even landings of Russian troops, 80,000 men at Ostend, were mentioned. The rumor also appears to have been fed to the enemy by the luckless German spy Karl Lodi, aka Charles Inglis. Basil Tomlinson, the head of CID at Scotland Yard in 1914, records that prior to his arrest in Ireland on October 22nd, all Lodi's letters and telegrams to his controller in neutral Sweden were intercepted with ease. He wrote all his letters in both English and German in ordinary ink without any disguise. His information would have been of comparatively little value even if they had reached the Germans, which it did not. The only report that was allowed to go through was the famous story of the Russian troops passing through England. The letter in question had been posted from Edinburgh on September 4th and was intercepted by MI5. Written in German, it read in English, "Will you kindly communicate with Berlin at once by wire, code, or whatever system at your disposal, and inform them that on September 3rd, great masses of Russian soldiers have passed through Edinburgh on their way to London and France. Although it must be expected that Berlin has knowledge of these movements, which probably took its start at Archangel, it may be well to forward this information. It is estimated that 60,000 men have passed, number which seems greatly exaggerated. I went to the depot and noticed trains passing through at high speed, blinds down. The landing in Scotland took place at Aberdeen. Yours truly, Charles." Indeed, in his 1969 study, British Secret Service author Richard Deacon extends supposition regarding Lodi and the Russians too far. According to Deacon, despite all his failures and blunders, Lodi, ironically enough, was taken more seriously by the Germans on the subject of his most foolish report, the arrival of the Russians. On the strength of this news received from Sweden, the Germans detached 2 divisions to guard the Belgian coast against the possible invasion by the Russians. The loss of these 2 divisions on the main Western Front probably cost the Germans the vital Battle of the Marne. That's debatable, but okay. Officially, the use of Secret Service made of the Porter's story about the Russians had been denied. It was denied for a very good reason. Intelligence services had long been aware that the Germans are apt to believe the most fantastic rumors, and to admit that this penchant had ever been exploited by the British could have done untold harm. From the Diary of Miss G. West, as cited in Believing the Unbelievable by Catronia Pinnell, there have been rumors for weeks that large numbers of Russian troops have been brought down from Edinburgh to Portsmouth and thence to France. Several people have seen porters and station masters who have seen them go through, or have even watered their horses. The workman of Woodchester says that boats that should have returned from Norway with wood for his sawmills have been commandeered and sent to Archangel, and for what purpose if not to bring over troops? Miss Leddon had a sister, a nun in Belgium. There had been Belgian soldiers quartered at the convent. One of the officers told her he had orders to go to the coast and guide the Russians to their ports. So there you have it. All manner of eyewitness testimony of Russians in England, including Army and Navy officers, all manners of the press, who we assume do their due diligence, the assumption of due diligence, that if it's in the news, it has been properly investigated. German intelligence and German army reacting to Russian troops landing in Belgium. Again, military intelligence, assumption of due diligence. The newspapers, assumption of due diligence. All of these things converge onto there, in fact, being Russians passing through England on their way to France. We even have a nice little story of an intrepid reverend diligently recording for posterity the transit of Russian troops through Essex. And that is what we call a primary source. That guy, he's on the ground. He is boots on the ground. He's in the thick of it. He knows there's Russian troops passing through here because he's there. And he's recording people who have seen them with their own eyes. They saw the Russian troops with their own eyes. They saw it. And are you going to say that they didn't see what they actually saw? Are you going to say, no, you didn't actually see that? You would have to. You would have to say, no, you didn't actually see that. All of you, everyone who's been making these reports, however many thousand believe they have seen the Russians in England, you actually didn't see that. And are all of them lying? Are all of them wrong? Yes. Yes, all of them are wrong. Also from the paper, Believing the Unbelievable, is a map credited to one Robert Wilkinson that maps out the locations of contemporary as in while this was happening, claims of Russians traveling through the United Kingdom that they were able to find. Now, in reality, this is just what they were able to find, which is going to be some fraction of what was written down. If something was not written down, if it was just word of mouth, we wouldn't have any record of it other than somebody writing down, there are a great many rumors here in such and such shire that Russians are passing through. Each one of these reports should be taken as kind of emblematic of a far greater volume of not recorded scuttlebutt. And that's one of the better examples of convergence of evidence all pointing to a thing that is not true. However many eyewitnesses there are, at least 1,000, probably somewhere on the order of 10,000, people in England who believe they actually saw the Russians traveling through the UK. Yes, they're all wrong. Yes, they all say they saw something they didn't actually see. They think they saw something they didn't actually see. And there's kind of a narrative going on, right?